oh, let me check this out. So I'm very serious about that. Learning about sales and liability was really helpful. It definitely, I'm not sure, but other than that, I'm not really sure if it has helped or not. I think in my life it's really helped. I'm thrilled to have graduated from law school. I'm thrilled to have used my brain as a way of helping others, which is what I plan to do. So I think having Barley and Birch as a business and then having my law degree as a way of just making another impact, I think is really helpful, but a little, I guess it has helped a little bit. Does that answer your question, Joe? Yes, lots of questions.
Hi, my name is Frank. The question I wanted to ask is, so for Barley and Birch, it's partially non-for-profit, right? So, as 15% of the total revenue goes towards non-for-profit organizations, does the government offer any tax deductions for being a non-for-profit and partial, or is that fully done out of self-interest?
Yeah, so that's another tricky part about the business is that we're technically a for-profit LLC. So we're technically just a regular old business. We just kind of state that we donate our profits. Then we had the foundation, which is a 501c3 pending organization. No, the government doesn't care. Okay. They don't offer. They don't offer any tax. I think they do a lot of green sort of benefits and stuff like that for mostly buildings and a lot of industry. But for us, because we give so much money away, no. I mean, basic tax breaks there are. But other than that, no.
Sure. And just one more question. So Barley and Birch online, you guys are moving into adult clothing as well, right? Adult clothing and bedding.
We're trying.
What is the whole marketing concept behind the move towards those two different industries?
The marketing logic behind it is that we get emails from customers every single day that are like, oh, you guys don't make anything for like 18-year-olds? I'm like, no, we stop at age 6. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And then our cotton is so soft. It's like silk. And so we get these questions like, hey, I know this is weird, but my kids like really won't take your clothes off, and it's getting weird because they're wearing them to bed. Could you maybe, like, I'll pay you whatever you want, would you make me some sheets out of that same cotton? And so you'd be a moron to not be like, maybe we should go into bedding. So we're working on it. Yeah, so the whole marketing is just our customers have been asking for it, and so we're trying to figure out the best way of going about it. But it's tricky.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, here we go.
Hi, I'm Margo. I'm a freshman. I'm just wondering, what does your business actually look like? Do you have a lot of employees that, do all these different things? I know that you mentioned you're trying to expand into bedding in different areas. So how are you dealing with that? Do you have different divisions and stuff inside your company?
It's just one giant joke. So it's a bunch of young 20-something girls, and they're very good at doing any given job at any given time. Because as a startup, you have to stay really flexible. So I could hire someone and say, your job is going to be all customer service, and this has happened. And then I say, forget that. I'm starting a Play-Doh company. I'm going to need you to do some research on Play-Doh. And they're like, oh my gosh, what? So it looks like a really fun, a really casual, a really flexible, a really quirky office. We love being weird and being quirky and being strange and having a lot of fun. So I think that's the driving factor. And just to, I guess, specifically answer your question, we have an office in North Carolina, and then we're looking to expand when I relocate to the city of Detroit in a couple years. So. Yeah. Thanks, you guys, for staying in for the long haul.
Hi, I'm Federico. I'm a freshman. What is a particular skill or way of approaching struggles that you learned at DePauw and helped you the most in your entrepreneurial life?
The way of approaching what?
Struggles or, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was just, this is such a tricky question. So I think it was just the inability to sit and wallow. So at DePauw, if you failed, the next day you better have a smile on your face, because why would you look like a frowner here? You'd be an outcast, right? It's you better be smiling and perky because we all are, so I think you just didn't have the option to just be to shuffle your feet and be like, I didn't get into Teach for America, or I failed a geology test. It happened. you just didn't have the option. So you learned, whether you liked it or not, to be like, okay, life is good, life moves on. And then eventually it did, and you forgot about that, you know? And so I think that's the way of doing it. So like, I mean, if I had $1 for every time I got horrible news and I sat there with just a smile on my face, like, okay, yep, that sounds perfect. And it wasn't what I wanted to hear, and I had polished that skill at DePauw, I mean, I'd be a quadrillionaire. I think that's what I learned at DePauw is you don't have the option to just be grumpy about failing, because you're gonna fail all the time. So, maybe you won't, but.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Madeline Claire, and my question is, as a young broke entrepreneur, how did you manage to overcome like your worst setback?
I just fought tooth and nail for it. I mean, the concept of perseverance is just super strong to me, and the concept of just the top thing that you have in life and that makes you the type of person that you are is your ability to persevere through the nastiest of situations. And so I think what happened was, and I'm just trying to think about like the lowest of lows when I was starting the business, and I don't know if I can think about what it was. There were so many, but I think it was just the ability to be like, well, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna just sit and just be like, well, I should just give up? Or are you just gonna fight for it and try to figure out what you're gonna do? So I think as a young broke entrepreneur, when I would just get slammed with bad news before we were up and running and before we were anything, I mean, I just remember moments where like, people would be like, oh, by the way, you know, you spoke to me on the phone when you were just starting. I'm going to send you a $4,000 bill. I'm like, you shyster, you didn't even do anything for us. Like, I'm not paying that. And he's like, oh, really? I'm going to sue you. I'm going to report you to the Better Business Bureau. I'm going to report you to this. I'm going to report you to this. I'm going to report you to this. And you're never going to have a business. And that happened. And I remember being like, oh, what? So it was awful. I just wanted to cry, and I probably did. And I think then just that ultimate low of being like, what did I get myself into? This is awful. And then just being like, well, are you going to give up or are you going to fight for it? And then just knowing that you have the ability to kind of really persevere and just scratch your way to the top, I think is the trick.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll take this last question. And
You're the last one.
Perfect. Last one. I'm Rob. I'm a sophomore, and you talked a lot about how important your connections were, or how connections are in life, and then you rattled off some of the most amazing connections I've ever heard of. And so I was wondering, what is your best advice, or like your best practice of going about getting those connections?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm really glad you asked that, because it's so often that I hear people like 20-somethings talk about networking, and to me that just says social climbing, and that just says like grubby. And I think it's really a positive thing, but how it can come off is very grubby. So I think my best pieces of advice for making really solid connections, like some of the top journalists in the world, I text on their birthday. I think having these connections in a genuine way, I think my advice would be to stay really humble, to be very grateful, to be so appreciative of every ounce of help and time you ever get, ever. I thank you all for being here. Like, be very grateful, and because that's number one rule. I'm also the very first person to get my hands dirty on a project. I can't remember who this was, but I was speaking at an event, and I was helping this person carry in this huge box, right? This huge, enormous box, and I didn't know who this person was. And the story is longer than I'm making it seem, but it turns out to be the guy that designed the iPod. But because a lot of people would walk by and say, like, whatever, I have a talk to give, I'm very nervous, I need to go. That was one thing, but just being a good person and saying, hey, you need help carrying this huge thing, that goes a long way. So just being infinitely kind, being infinitely appreciative, and really humble, I think, is the best thing you could ever be to make these really, really sincere connections, which, like you said, are just the most meaningful ways of, I guess, succeeding.
Okay, as we wrap up here, I have two things I want to mention. One is the next 175th anniversary Distinguished Alumni Lecture will be entitled Leading with Excellence and Ethics in Times of Great Change, and it will feature Judith Edstrom, class of 70, and Mary Leonard Ramshaw, class of 70. That'll be on April 11th at 7:30 at the Janet Prindle Institute for Ethics. And the last thing I want to say, Kyle, is it's so great to have you back at DePauw. I really enjoyed so much working with you during your time at WGRE. We can't wait to see what you're going to do in the years ahead, and I know there are a lot of great things still to be accomplished by you. So you're a great example of what can happen with a lot of energy and ambition, and DePauw is so very, very proud of you, and thanks so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Smitly.
Thank you.